This is the official time. Okay. All right. Good evening. Welcome to our Monday, September 20th, 2021 Clemson City Council meeting. I'll call this meeting to order, and right now I will turn it over to Councilmember Duckworth. You're going to do the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. I think you did it recently too. So
I think I did. That's what we're moving on. All right. Dear Lord, we thank you for the opportunity to gather here tonight. For so many you've given so much that we have this opportunity, those that continue to serve and afford us the freedom to be here. Dear Lord, just thank you for this as we move into the fall of the year, the change in the seasons and the blessings that really help our community stand out. Just ask that you watch over us tonight and guide our conversation as we try to make decisions that are in the best interest of all concerned, and that we have peaceful conversation with the ability to do so. In your son's name we pray. Amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
thank you, John. Appreciate that. Next, we'll go into public session, and I will turn it over to Councilmember Smith. I'm just turning everything over, so there you go. Appreciate it.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. So this is an opportunity to speak before City Council on any item that is not outlined on the agenda in terms of policy action or other policy items. You have 3 minutes to speak. We would ask for you to sign in, as well as introduce yourself and where you reside. So that would be helpful information. So this is your opportunity. And for those of you who are joining us online, you can actually call in as well. That number is 653-9886. You would follow the instructions, and they will let us know that you are there, so we can cue you in to speak. So if you have something you'd like to say, we'd love to hear from you. The time is now. It doesn't look like we have any. Oh, come on, sir.
Good evening. Can I take this off or no?
Yes, please.
Okay, please. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of you for my 3 minutes. My name is Scott Saunders. I live up in Indiana, South Carolina. I wanted to come to Clemson, but I didn't get in, so I had to go. But that's the bad news. The good news is I met my wife when we were married 40 years, so I still have lots of warrants. But anyway, I'm here to talk about a proclamation that I believe you're familiar with, called Founding Fathers Faith Awareness Month. The reason why we're putting the proclamation together is because clearly our country is in, let's just say we're not all together. And so one of the things I've noticed is that people are trying to cancel everything that's good about America. And one of the things that is good is the people who bled, sacrificed, and died, so all of us we're living in the best country on the planet. What people don't know is the faith that people had to endure what they endured. If you remember the Revolutionary War and so forth, the enemy was within, and people suffer a lot. They lost loved ones. I want to tell one quick story about one of the guys who signed the Declaration and the Constitution. His name was Robert Morris. Robert Morris was a business guy, but he was also a financier. And as you can imagine, we were in pretty tough shape with the British. But this one guy, he decided that he was going to finance the war. When I say finance the war, literally he took loans out in his name. He was a land speculator, and he loaned the country $2 million, $1 million. That's in 1782 money. Was to pay the soldiers, have George Washington pay the soldiers, and to move the soldiers from up north down to Yorktown, where they followed up Cornwallis, and they won the war. Now, that in itself is amazing. By the way, $1 million back then is worth $24 billion today. You wonder who would risk $24 billion for our country. The bad news is for him is, unfortunately, land prices died, and the government couldn't pay him back $1 million. Neither would the states. So a small creditor foreclosed on him, and he spent 3 years in debtor's prison for this one guy. He died penniless. My point in saying that is no one knows these stories, and that's the level of what these guys and ladies did and sacrificed, and that's just one story. So my point in coming here was to ask you to issue the proclamation called Founding Fathers Faith Awareness Month, where we try to introduce people to what these guys did, because there are many, many stories, and we can't forget that. Everyone living in the United States owes these guys a debt of gratitude that can never be paid back. But we don't want to forget them. We don't want to cancel it. We want people to remember that. So that's the purpose of why I'm here and the why. And I'm doing this for my kids, grandkids, but I'm also doing it for your kids and your grandkids, and every young guys and ladies sitting behind me. So probably use my 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir. But if you would like to send us some information, I know we got that information, but just a little bit more about is there an organization or, because I know you sent us the actual, what you
Proclamation
to say,
correct.
But is this just you, or is this an organization? Just a little bit more about.
Sure. This actually started 20 years ago. And I was on I-26, and I was downloaded something to do, and part of it was to remind Americans of Christian heritage. I'm an individual. My nonprofit is called City on Code Communities. My for-profit is called Programs. But over the last 8 years, for instance, David Barton, who is a well-known historian, has 100,000 original letters and documents from prior to 1800. We'll forget more things than all of us will know together. I brought him into Charlotte 7 or 8 years ago. I brought William Federer in. He's another guy. Both guys should get the Medal of Freedom for what they know and what they've done. They've done the heavy lifting. I just pulled stuff from them and make it available. So starting 8 years ago, I came up with Patriots Faith Awareness Month with July, because the same stories apply, and same with the President's Faith Awareness Month. These guys had tremendous faith. In fact, 93% of the people who signed the Constitution were a mainline Christian denomination. And three of them were deists. However, 2 of them were Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin, and I think you have some quotes on them. You probably say, yeah, they believed in God. So it was the miracles on these things, I mean, I can't take enough time to explain it. George Washington, in his own pen, wrote a letter that said, I had musket balls go through my coat 4 times. I had two horses shot out from under me, and he wasn't hurt at all. Now, that's a miracle. So what we're trying to do is I've invited 70 mayors in the Carolinas. To date, only 1 has said no. And he said that because it was about church and state. And I said, that's not what that was about. The Danbury letter that they were concerned about talking to Thomas Jefferson was that they were afraid that the Methodists would get the national denomination, or the Baptists or something like that. That's the way it was in England. That's why they escaped from England, because the head of the country, the king, was also the head of the church. That never ends well.
And Mr. Summers, I don't want to interrupt you again, because I want to be mindful of
Sure,
the conversation.
absolutely.
So I think if you can just kind of provide some insight, some historical perspective in writing to us, then we can look that over.
Sure, absolutely.
If that's something you're asking, and we'll be happy to do that.
All right.
Can
Okay.
I ask a question? So I also do look at, I want to know actually whether this is your organization, because I did look at it. And
Yes,
I find
yes.
something that, you know, everybody has to be cautious about who's spawning these ideas, because we don't want to be connected to something we don't want to be. But I just want to be sure this is you. I really don't know. It says, this is from a larger document. But as you can tell, we've been stewarded with a vision of reaching people for Jesus Christ, glorifying God, and returning the country to its spiritual roots. Is this your group, or is this a different group?
Where did you get that from?
It's called Founding Fathers Monthly. It's a webpage.
No, I don't have any connection with Founding Fathers Monthly.
But is that your group's organization? Is that your organization's statement?
I'm not aware of the organization, so I can't say anything about where that came from. But that, I have nothing to do with it. However, I don't necessarily disagree with what they're going for. But I don't know them.
That's why I'm checking this.
No worries. No worries. Any other questions? All right.
Thank you. We
Thank you,
appreciate
folks.
speaking.
Appreciate your
Yeah.
time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was actually getting ready to say that, but since, yeah, so if you feel comfortable, just remember to always just remove for the period of time while you're speaking. So thank you, Beverly.
Are there any other comments from the public? And if not, we will go ahead and close public session at this time and turn it back over to Mayor Haddock.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. The next item will go to the approval of minutes. I should say possible approval. Would anybody like to make a motion for September 7th, 2021?
I move we accept minutes as written.
Second, okay. Any further discussion? Okay.
Just one question. Beverly, I don't know if this is correct, but on page 3 or 4, I think it is, it says public comment, Karen Fagan, Alabama, spoke in support of masks and suggested all masks be the same full coverage. I don't think she spoke in favor of masks. It was about, she started that way, but I'm not asking you to interpret this, but my impression was she was not speaking in favor of masks, that she had a different perspective on this. I don't know that. I don't know if you can check with her. Maybe people didn't see it that way, but I did not see that as that she was supportive of masks.
I didn't think she was.
Sorry, what's that?
With that change, is everybody okay with removing that line where it wouldn't have favor or against? Is that,
Just say discuss masks. And leave
Yeah.
that maybe.
yep.
Don't say favor or again, just say
Either or,
discuss.
neither. So thank you, yes. So with that change, is that okay to make an amended change to those minutes? Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay. Thank you very much. The next one is September 13th. Would somebody like to make a motion?
So moved.
A second.
Thank you all. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, raise your right hand. All right, thank you very much. Next, we'll go to reports and discussion and agenda items. And the first one is to discuss requesting the Public Arts and Culture Commission to develop a recommendation for creative crosswalks. Councilmember McGuire is going to lead this discussion, so thank you very much.
So the idea for this came when whoever sent us the email about the crosswalk off of Berkeley Drive and Frontage Road, maybe Carrie Carson. Anyway, in there she had just some pictures of creative crosswalks that basically were murals. And so I know that she was discussing that specifically, but I think she saw that as another idea. So I brought it up. I did a little bit of research, Google kind of stuff. And there are other places that do this. Spartanburg apparently has 2 crosswalks. And I think they call them crosswalk murals. I think it's Spartanburg that do that. Joan from the Arts Commission has actually worked with a group. I think she said in San Jose maybe that did this. And essentially it's just what it says, that rather than crosswalks just being the striped lines, that it could be anything that an artist would want it to be and design it to be. It doesn't seem, as near as I can tell, it doesn't seem to negatively impact the safety of the crosswalk at all. In fact, it increases awareness. So I thought that would kind of neat for one of the things that Clemson become known for is creative crosswalks. We can do that. And honestly, as much as I hate to bring the word up, it sort of followed from John's thoughts about tolls. That art could be a very strong component of the city, and maybe there's a way to institutionalize it and make it more present. So I think the suggestion is we pass this to Joan and to the Arts Commission for discussion. I mean, no pressure to do it or not. It seems like a neat idea, and if you looked at the murals, they're pretty interesting. They really are. And so if we want to send it to them, I think Andy said we paint crosswalks every 2 or 3 years.
Every year.
We might want to start in one place like downtown or somewhere more contained. But anyway, I just thought it'd be a neat idea to have them pursue it. Maybe go through the same kind of steps John went through, and see if there's enough interest, if there's a safety issue to it, if we can come up with a way to do it, the cost involved. Again, if we're paying to redo crosswalks every year, it may not be a whole lot of cost on the city to do it this way. But anyway, so just a thought, we don't want to pass on.
Any questions, discussion? If not, is everybody good with going to Andy to go to the next public arts and culture agenda item? So to present this from council, everybody in support? I'm seeing all head
As long
nods.
as we, and we need to let Nathan say no to everything. Sorry. And we need to let Nathan say no and tell us all the problems and issues so we can deal and address with those as they're going through those
Exactly.
discussions. So just have Nathan involved.
Well said. All right. Thank you, Fran, for bringing that. Appreciate it. All right. Our next is to receive a report on the 150th year celebration. Councilmember Watt's going to lead it, and I think Elaine's also here as well.
I do. I have my co-conspirator, if she will come up to the microphone. As you guys know, we've been talking about the sesquicentennial celebrating throughout 2022. And we are talking about, as you have your handouts in front of you, building a community from Calhoun to Clemson. I've already learned way more history about this than I ever intended to know about our town. But I'm going to let Elaine talk about the history very briefly, and then I will go over where we are and what we need to do next.
So I discovered when we were doing the comp plan update in 2019, there was a little paragraph that talked about 1872 being the date that Calhoun, the settlement of Calhoun was recognized. Well, you calculating that puts 2022 as our 150th anniversary. So we've been talking about trying to do something like this for a long time. We struggle, I do, in trying to find an accurate trail of the history of what happened when. So I'm working on that. There are bits and pieces in some of Jerry Reel's book, Trent's book, several others. So, and then I think Rhonda Thomas has found some good information, including in what she's done with Call My Name and the cemetery issues as well. I mean, not issues, but the cemetery discoveries as well. So we know that we started in 1872, and then there was actual recognition as an official town at some point, and I have some of those dates, but I don't have them with me. And then the one that makes everybody think Clemson's not very old is that the name was changed from Calhoun to Clemson in 1943. So it does sound like we're not very old, but if you track it back to the other, so I think it's an appropriate time to celebrate Clemson. I'm hoping it'll be a good time to kind of reunite our community, because I feel like we've got a lot of division going on with a lot of things, and we can come together and celebrate something that's really special.
So yeah, and we have a great steering committee. So the goal is this: we have a steering committee that's made up roughly of the 12 people there, and then what we're going to do is we have 4 working groups. So our events throughout the year will be broken up into history. And so that group, for example, we're talking about doing recorded verbal histories from people. We're talking about, oh God, there's so many. This is a crazy group of historians that we have. Joshua Catalano, if you don't know him, he's a young professor at the university. He's incredible and is getting the students involved. If you guys weren't here already, because you have to be here, right? And then we have, who else am I thinking of? Obviously, we've included Angela and Joan. Our goal is not to create a whole bunch of new events. Our goal is, where possible, to piggyback on things that are already going on. Lindsay, Lindsay's here somewhere. Lindsay, there you are. So Lindsay's been making sure that I stay straight on this, but we have some really good partnerships. We also have art and culture. So again, working with Joan for things like summer camp, working with Angela for the events, and Elaine has seen Vince Jackson to talk about the music, because what is it, Little John's
Grill.
Little John, there you go, thank you. And so that's part of it. Music will be part of this, obviously. Outdoor rec, we want to have at least a 5K race. We want to do a parade. And then one of the big goals you'll see on the calendar that we sort of added around is we would like to do a big gala in December of 22 that would celebrate the food and the culture of our community. I don't know. I asked Andy if Clemson's ever had a gala before, and he didn't know. So we thought it might be about time. So what we're doing is this. We are sketching out the calendar of events, and you will see that I lost my steam come about fall as I was starting to sketch all this out because it turned into a lot. We are looking to launch in January. Obviously, we would like to have a logo competition, and then you can see it just tracks through. I do have some help in how to plan a road race, which is something I've never done. And then we're obviously working with our neighborhoods. We want to involve the businesses, figure out ways to get them involved. We did have Leonard Keller on the committee, but with family reasons he had to sort of withdraw, but we have some other business members who are sort of active. So anyway, this is what we're doing, and what we need help with is you guys coming up with other great ideas. One of the ideas I'm most excited about is doing history tours on the lake. The lake history is not the prettiest history of Clemson, but it is a very interesting part of our history. And so Merritt spoke up that we have 4 floating docks. I did not know that. And a flotilla of John boats. And so we talked about if we could do floating history tours for an hour. So we're looking for really great ideas of how to get everybody involved from one end of Clemson to another. So any ideas that you have, if any of you would like to volunteer to do any of this, we'd be happy to have you. And so we are still looking for volunteers. So whatever questions you have, we will try to answer. Did I leave anything out?
I'm just going to say, I think there's some things, like if we identify a month that we want to highlight the churches in the history, and Abel Church in particular has a really long history. I think they are 2 years ago, maybe they celebrated their 150. So I think that would be a good place. But if we pick if we just give the churches the opportunity, so if we say March or whatever month we decide is the church's history month, then it would be up to Abel or Fort Hill or whatever to decide what they wanted to do during that month. It shouldn't cost us any money, and we really should just say, here, figure out what you want to do to help contribute and celebrate this significant anniversary. And I think that's the case for several things that we've talked about doing throughout the year.
That's what we're working on. Mr. Duckworth, did I answer all of your questions?
That's great. And yeah, so Calhoun was the one I was asking about, Calhoun is the one I've been asking about, where we were kind of tagging to find that date.
I learned things. I did not know it was 1943 either. I did not know that.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Any questions or thoughts? Or
Yes.
I was just going to thank y'all both for the leadership. We greatly appreciate it. We're excited to be a part of it. And we'll do our part.
it would be helpful if we had some general idea of what our budget would be. And I actually thought about reaching out to some of these other, Colorado Springs is doing one this year for their 150th, and several others that we found, reaching out to the city administration and asking them what was their budget for doing that, to kind of give us an idea of what others have had.
Andy told me $5.
So we'll make sure 15. We'll make sure you have a budget within the next couple of weeks, right?
We actually have 5,000.
Yeah.
We already have 5,000.
Well, we wanted to give you a sketch of the events too, so that we could see, and a lot of these you'll see are partnerships, and some of them are creative, and like the boat thing, I don't know how much that would cost exactly. We have to figure that out.
Well, and some things, if they're ticketed events,
they're
could help
ticketed,
pay
that's
for
right.
it, or generate, not maybe pay for the whole thing and generate additional, but help pay for those events, like if you had to pay $1 for a ticket for the John boat tour down by the dikes and everything.
And that was one of the reasons we also partnered with other organizations.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that we could keep the cost down as well.
Are y'all comfortable emailing this out? Yeah, you want to wait?
Yes.
Okay. That'd be good.
I will make sure you have
Thank
it.
you.
Elaine, you were saying real quick with one thing, when you Googled 150th celebrations, I'm amazed around the whole country how many celebrations in different municipalities are celebrating 150 years. So it's
That's
a big deal. It should be a big deal.
It is a big deal. It's a group. Thank you very much again. All right. Put this on. All right. The next item is C, is staff reports. Andy.
For those of you on the committee, the applications will be ready for the assistant administrator selection this Wednesday. We'll have those ready for you to pick up. and we're going to ask you to select your top 5-ish applications by Monday, and then we can get together to schedule a time and we will sit down and discuss who to bring in for interviews. The final Metals Park public presentation is next Thursday, the 28th at 6:30. That'll be at the fire station. And then we're targeting a city council final presentation for October 18th at your regular meeting. The next conversations with council is this Thursday, 6:30 at Nettles Park. New location this time.
Oh, I forgot that.
We'll probably need to send out another communication just to make sure that people don't show up at the wrong place. We'll put a sign up on the door at the fire station. And then our first planning meeting for the redevelopment workshop will be this Wednesday. And we're hoping to have first public meeting sometime second week of next month, hopefully. Second or third. Before the middle of October. So it's going to come pretty quick. That's all I got, Mr. Mayor.
So Andy, who's the meeting for on Wednesday? You said there's a redevelopment meeting this Wednesday.
Oh, that's just for staff to come up with the schedule and
Not us.
work with development strategies to put some logistics together and then find out who else we need to have involved and that sort of thing.
So that doesn't, that's.
No, I was just giving you all an update of where we were on that and give you a timeline of when to expect things to start picking up.
Any questions, comments for Andy? All right, thank you, Andy. Appreciate it very much. We'll go into policy and action agenda items. Remember, if you'd like to dial in 653-9886 and follow the instruction, it is a 2-minute limit per speaker for any of these items on the policy action agenda. Item A is to consider second reading of ordinance to amend the city procurement code to be eligible for state and federal grants. And did you want to add anything else, Andy?
No, nothing's changed.
Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve second reading of an ordinance to amend the city procurement code to be eligible for state and federal grants as presented.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All right, passes unanimously. All right, item B is to consider first reading of ordinance for a text amendment to the city code to create a new zoning district R7. And Todd, I believe you're going to lead this discussion. Thank you.
Well, there really haven't been any changes since we talked about it last meeting. There were a few questions from a citizen that I believe most of y'all were copied on the response. But that was the only comment that we received on it since it was last before you. Be happy to answer any questions.
My only question is, I recall, and you do too, I'm certain, when we were kicking around R6, that there was a real concern about infill, possible. And so do we still have that same concern with R7, or would we have that same concern with R7?
The same, I guess there are two different ways to answer that, John. One is that the origin of your concern is that the possibility exists whether it's R7, R5, R6, R4, R2, R9, that what we call, or some citizens are calling infill, that possibility exists. The way the city ordinances work, to create a zoning district, you'd have to have a minimum of 2 acres. But if the question is, if somebody assembled 2 acres worth of country walk and wanted to rezone that R6 and put in a little bit higher density, they could do it. If the planning commission and if council decided it was what you wanted to do. It's not by right. It would be a decision based upon city council. And so, I don't know how that answers your questions. The possibility exists with, just like if you rezoned that same parcel in Country Walk or Camelot or Riggs Drive, RM1, you could do patio homes on it. If y'all decided that was a good decision to rezone it to RM1.
Been reading particularly back and forth you had with the citizen, it seemed that there was a place in there where you talked about to do R7, it had to change something from one to the other. Didn't it have to basically touch an R7, for example? Is that or did I misread that?
I'm not sure I followed that. I know what some of the questions Mr. Healy was asking included that if you had a 27,000 square foot lot, could you carve off 7,000 and make it one R7 lot and then an R20 lot? And the answer was no,
Right.
not unless you had to have at least 2 contiguous acres of the same zoning designation. And so I remember that discussion, and that, and I clarified. I think there was some confusion in one of the other responses to hopefully I made clear that you would have to have a minimum of 2 acres of land to create any zoning designation. You may recall when Thad Turnipseed was rezoning that little piece of RM3 up there, and there was discussion, well, why not make it R20? Well, you legally can't. It was a third of an acre. You have to have a minimum of 2 acres. By leaving it RM3, it was part of the surrounding zoning. We didn't really have a choice if we were going to annex it in, but to do it that way. I use that as an example that you have to have at least 2 acres, otherwise it's called spot zoning. Otherwise, we can make your property zone R7, and you don't want that. But I do think the most important thing for all of council and citizens, anybody watching or listening, to remember is that if council chooses to advance this ordinance, y'all are not rezoning a square inch of the city of Clemson. You're not making any decisions about anybody's property. You're putting another tool in your toolkit, giving yourself that option should the situation arise that you felt like, it would be great that if we could do something like RM1, but without the duplexes or without some of the other things that come along, patio homes and things like that. That's kind of the evolution of this ordinance and how we got to where we are. I don't know that I answered your question.
So Todd, let me ask a question, because I'm sitting up here doing some quick math. All right, so with a 60-foot front lot width minimum,
Correct.
there's an absolute minimum of 30 feet of front and rear setback. So theoretically, on a R20 lot of 100 by 200, you could only get like 1 1/3 R7 lots onto an R20 lot.
You can only
and
get
so
one.
you could get one.
Well, I guess
one.
you're right. You're right.
But if you had the 2 acres, and let's say you had 4 R20 lots
Correct.
side by side,
Yeah.
that means you could get, where there are 4 houses now, you could get 5. It's not going to squeeze in like 4 more houses or double the amount of houses, even though the lot size is significantly less than half in R20 within those setbacks.
Well, I think the one thing that we came in the discussion we had before about it was you had a depth of say 200 feet on those R20 lots, and so what you could possibly do is if you had 2 acres, you put it together, you'd come in with like a cul-de-sac in there, and then you would do your lots around that way, where the frontage would not necessarily be on like Riggs Drive, but it would be on the road or the cul-de-sac that so went in there, so you could do it that way.
But I still think that the 60 feet causes that to where 60 feet plus the setbacks, you still can't get a 7,000 square foot lot, that many 7,000
No,
square
you're still probably maxing out at 5.
Yeah, I think you're getting 5 houses where you have 4 at the absolute most in R20. And so it would be less, it would be even
One of the
more
things
difficult to do in R12.
That I think your concept is spot on, Bob. I don't want to commit to the math on it yet, but your concept is
don't
right.
do that.
The limiting factor is the minimum lot width. Right. That when we were talking about R6, one of the things I remember was that we were being a little more patio home-like in our frontages, because I'd like a patio home development, RM1, there is no lot width requirement. It's a 10 units per acre, and then it's determined by what your layout can be and the setbacks. R7, by having a 60-foot lot width, is going to be the limiting factor more than anything.
So just a couple of things. Number one, your answers to Mr. Haley were great, and they helped me a lot. So that was very good what you did.
Great.
And so I understand you just said this again. I think this is important. Nothing is going to be rezoned R7. This is just something to allow it to happen if it needs to be. So my only question is, so as concisely as possible, what is the tool this gives us that we don't have right now? Because you said this is not going to happen. It's a tool. Just in words that even I can understand. But what is that tool that Bob Eagles can say the answer to this also? What is the tool we don't have now that this will give us?
We right now, you have to have a lot on 4,000 or 6,000 square feet. You would also introduce patio homes, duplexes, and modular homes and other products that are higher density. This allows the city to have R20, R12, and R7, where there's truly the uses are single-family homes. So it's the basic, in fact, it's even more restrictive than R20 and R12 that the recommendation before you, in R20 and R12, we currently allow elderly care, daycare centers, group homes, and things like that. The Planning Commission took all of that out of R7, so those are no longer allowed uses in R7. But the primary use and the objective behind it was to allow for single-family homes. That's the only type of residential use allowed in R7. So that's the unique aspect of this. RM1 allows, you could have 4,000 square foot lots, but you also could have 10 lots per acre. You could also have duplexes. And those were things that we've had several projects presented to the city in the recent past that I think there was some frustration to say, if we had something more like an R7, it might have gone forward. But because we were opening the door for things that the developer wasn't planning on doing but would have the right to do if they were rezoned, this is a way to, there is no right to patio homes or duplexes, but there is the right to the 7,000 square foot. So the unique aspect is that smaller lots, but only single-family homes.
So really, this gives us another tool to protect neighborhood integrity in terms of single-family homes by allowing smaller homes, but only single families, which might help some of our other housing issues also.
Yes.
So it really does protect neighborhoods, single-family neighborhoods. And one more way to do that would not require large houses to build. Is that fair to say?
Oh, you have to repeat that, please.
Protecting the single-family neighborhoods by allowing houses to be built, but they have to still be single-family houses.
Correct.
They can be smaller.
They wouldn't have to necessarily be smaller because Patrick Square, those lots are on average about 5,500 square feet. Those lot sizes are even smaller, but you're definitely not as far away from your neighbors as you are in R20 and R12. What we're seeing is not a big reduction in house size. We're seeing a big reduction in lot size. At least that's the trend in Clemson and throughout the country. But again, I do want to reiterate that to anyone misunderstanding this, that we are not, the city of Clemson, should y'all advance this, no property is changing tonight, and that anyone who is interested in doing something like that would go through a very public process of going through the Planning Commission, a public hearing, and 2 meetings with council to decide whether or not any particular parcel of land should be changed to R7.
Any other discussions, comments? Thank you, Tom. Appreciate you being here. Did anybody want to, and just keep in mind, I'll just add, remember Planning Commission first discussed it, I think, back in June 14th, if I got the date, and then recently approved by Planning Commission on August 9th. Am I correct, Todd?
Correct.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, if not, would somebody like to make a motion?
Consider first reading of an ordinance for a text amendment to the city code to create a zoning district R7.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All right, passes unanimously. Thank you again, Todd. This next item is C, is consider first reading of an ordinance to require persons or entities desiring water and/or sewer service at locations outside the city's corporate boundaries may be provided such service at the city's sole discretion and must submit a petition for annexation or execute an annexation covenant to run with the property or both. Andy, did you want to?
Yeah, this is the ordinance that we discussed in the last meeting. The primary reason you want to consider this is because growth occurring outside of your area, providing utilities is basically, y'all providing a lot of expense that isn't necessarily recoupable just simply through the fees alone, and it creates fringe growth that you have no control over. This will give you an opportunity as you provide service to newly developed areas beyond your limit, your borders, to have more control over its development.
Questions, comments? If not, would somebody like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve first reading of an ordinance requiring persons and entities desiring water and sewer services at locations outside the city's corporate boundaries may provide such service at the city's sole discretion and must submit a petition for annexation or execute an annexation covenant to run with the property or both as presented.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I didn't want to read that one.
You didn't want to-
I started to say it.
You know, we both had to read it. So. Thanks, Bob. Okay, any further discussion? All right, all in favor, raise your right hand. All right, passes unanimously as well. All right, next item is consider first reading of ordinance to authorize the city to execute or deliver equipment lease purchase agreement in the amount not to exceed $895,000 for the purchase of a jetback truck, knuckle boom truck, and a front loader garage truck. Leslie, thank you for being here. Like your mask.
Thank you.
Good tiger.
Yes, we are wanting to consider the first reading. We are actually putting it out for bid tomorrow upon approval, and those bids are due back October 15th in time for the second reading and approval of the lowest bidder. So, any questions?
This is a lease. How long is the lease?
Well, we're asking for bids for a 5-year lease and a 7-year lease, and the financial advisors will help us figure out what's the better term based on the rates we receive. And the life of these assets have 7
But it's a
10
lease
years.
purchase, isn't it?
I'm sorry?
It's a lease purchase, is it not?
It's a capital lease,
Right.
yes, sir.
Any questions? Any other questions? Let's say for Leslie. If not, would somebody like to make a motion?
I move we approve the first reading to authorize the city to execute and deliver an equipment lease purchase agreement not to exceed $895,000 for the purchase of a jetback truck, a knuckle boom truck, and a front loader garbage truck.
Second.
All right, thank you both. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All right. Thank you again, Leslie. Appreciate it. Other policy items, consider authorizing the city engineer, which is the interim city engineer right now, so to work with the Friends of the Green Crescent Trail to apply for the South Carolina Recreational Trail Program grant and commit to a minimum match of $25,000. So Nathan, thank you for being here.
Good evening.
I know you've got your hands full right now.
So this is the same grant that we used in Clemson Park to do the fast track. We're looking to just basically apply again for Gateway Park. The first phase of the Green Crescent Trail will go from Clemson Park to Gateway Park, or Frontage Road, Berkeley to Gateway Park. And the university is putting in a pedestrian crossing on Vineyard, and it will go all the way down to Perimeter Road. So this one connection doesn't have a wide trail, so we believe it's a good good portion, a good placement for this grant, and also the work will about equal what the grant would be willing to give us.
Any questions for Nathan? Yeah.
Just a couple. So the grant maximum is 100,000.
Maximum, yes, sir.
So then this would be so why is the minimum match 25,000? 25% is what the match is. Well, that's a different question. It says here the match is 80-20. Is it 80-20 or 75-25?
It's 80-20. So like if the expenditure was $100,000 in total,
Okay.
the grant would match up to 80,000, and the city would have to contribute 20.
Okay, so
I think
that's a 25.
the thought process was that if we exceeded the $125,000, that we would have the ability to do that.
But is the maximum grant of 100,000 their maximum though, or ours? Is that the largest grant they give?
The largest funds that you can receive from the grant is $100,000.
So really, our match should be maximum 25, not a minimum, unless we're going to match higher than we have to.
So, am I interpreting this correctly? We're just anticipating we probably will go over 100,000,
Possibly.
and that's where we're putting a
We're
little.
building in a little bit of cushion there.
Exactly.
So we don't
Okay.
have-
Yeah,
That's why I want to make sure.
it's
I'm
a
clear.
safety-
See what we're just cushioning a little bit of an excess for the cost of doing this.
If we get
That's
a, if we get,
match, so that's two different
It's not the
issues.
grant match, that's a different
So
expense.
then maybe it needs to be minimum.
So minimum. Okay.
But it wouldn't be a maximum match of 20,000 as well?
Well, I don't know if it's 20%. All I read in the grant requirements was says that if you have a $100,000 award, you have to put in $25,000.
Right.
For $125,000.
Then it's
I don't
not
think it's
80-20.
It just said you have to put in $25,000 per 100,000.
It's not.
No.
Let's say 75, 25.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
all I think it's.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
And I do think, and again, if it truly is a match, it should only be a maximum of 25,000. Now, if we're talking about additional budget for the project, but that's not the match, right? The match would be what
It's for the grant itself.
PRT wants and requires. So again, I would prefer to say a match up to 25,000, which would let us get less if the grant's not 100.
Yeah.
It matches the grant requirements.
And obviously the goal is to keep the project as low as possible, but, in
We could
case we
spend more money
the
than
entire.
that. This is for this.
So change them. You're making an amendment motion of two.
We haven't had a motion
Oh, we haven't had a motion. That's right. Thank you. It's not even after 7. I'm starting to lose it. Sorry. Thank you. So, all right. That clear? Any other questions? Would somebody like to make a motion?
So I'll make a motion to approve this, but then someone else has to make a motion to amend it.
Or you can amend.
No, you can
we
amend it.
amend it in the motion.
You can
that
say
we're
it,
back.
right?
you can make
Start.
the amendment to
Start.
the original.
Actually, I think Roberts is trying to look grave to this, but okay. So I'll make the motion that we approve the request with the $25,000 maximum.
So,
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you, Nathan.
Appreciate it very much. All right, next item of other policy items is consider a MOU or Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Clemson, Town of Pendleton, and Anderson County for the management and operations of the Pendleton-Clemson wastewater treatment plant. Benji, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Well, we're finally at this point that we want to consider a memorandum of understanding between the town of Pendleton and Anderson County to develop an intergovernmental agreement for the Pendleton-Clemson wastewater treatment plant. This is going to allow each of us equal voting privileges. Now we've been outvoted 2-1 for the last 42 years, so this is a good thing happening. It was going to take a while to get this moving, and the plant current treatment capacity is 2 million gallons, and we've been in an advancement agreement for the last 5 years with South Carolina DHEC, and as long as our flows stay where they are, don't reach 1.6 million, we're okay. And they're going to push everybody to move, but with the Cochran Road treatment plant, it took 2 years basically to get the plans ready to go and get the contractor. So this is this thing needs to continue on.
So just a couple of issues. I read this and I got confused, so it's me, it's not this. So on page 2 then, letter C, it says each person on the board will carry equal voting privileges. That's not true, right? You can have more voting privileges than the other members. To me, equal implies the old model that there are 3 votes equally distributed across the 3 representatives. But I thought this was to tie it into our expenditures and not be going to be prorated, or I don't know the right word, Benji. But this to me reads like on letter C on page 2 that we're retaining that 1 vote for each of the 3 parties. But I thought the intent of this was to not keep
We all have this.
This gives us equal voting representation on management decisions for the amount of debt service we pay for the upfit will be equal to our allocation of the plan. So we're not going to be subsidizing other people's share of the growth of the plan.
But does it, I did not see that in here when I read through it. I missed it, and it did not clear to me, but, because I knew the intent was to not have equal votes when expenditures are different, to be more representative of what we give, but I didn't see the part that made misses.
Page 4.
503, top of page 4.
Right.
It says allocation of debt service will be as follows: Anderson County 40%, Pendleton 26.7, Clemson 33.3. I'm skipping some words in between, but that's where it talks about the debt service.
Okay.
And that's what we're talking about, right? I mean,
Yes.
when we draw it in December, we're gonna take on a note, and then we're gonna
We've got to pay for that much
We're
capacity.
gonna pay it in these ratios.
We're paying more for capacity now. 'Cause
We
we
retain
own
our
the
current
plan.
capacity, and then we just pay for 33% of the increase.
Yes.
So I did see that. I guess this is what confuses me. I didn't see where that addressed the issue about voting, though. That talks about allocation of costs. But isn't this also about how we vote when we sit at the table with the other 2 representatives, or just the distribution of costs? I didn't
It's
see where
both. It's
this
both.
linked to the voting. So talk me through where this goes back to the voting issue. That on page 2 still looks like we're 1 of 3 votes. Are we still going to be 1
It
of 3
requires
votes
a
on other
2/3
issues?
vote to make a
2/3
change.
vote.
It would require a 2/3 vote, 2 people. It would no longer would be possible for one party to make a decision for 3. It would actually take a majority.
Right. But, okay, so I'm misunderstanding it. I thought part of the issue was that when 3 of us sit down and vote, if Robert's expenses or costs have been double mine, essentially he gets 2 votes to my 1 vote. So it's prorated for 1. Well, it's reflective of our cost, not our numbers. Is that not the intent of this?
No, the intent is to make it so that each party has equal voting rights in how they manage the plant. Like say, we want to go do a flow rate study.
Right.
We want to look at hiring a full-time staff instead of using outside contractor to manage the plant. Those types of decisions. The annual operating budget.
Right.
Those types of things. But the actual debt allocation will be based on your capacity, your additional capacity, because that would equate to your new customer growth and allow you to pay an equitable share based on the amount of revenue you should be bringing in.
So here's what confused me, and I'll stop after this. In the original intent, the first sentence says, second sentence, there's a 3-way agreement to manage the Pendleton WWTP operations. The city of Clemson currently pays 54% of the cost and has 33% voting representation. This has been an ongoing issue for a number of years, and this agreement will make it so that each partner has equal share in the cost and operations. So this does not change.
Not equal share of cost and equitable share of cost.
Equitable.
It should be equitable cost and share in operations.
Okay, but it won't change the 33% voting representation.
No.
That was not the case. I misread this. I thought this was to make the voting
Well, there might be
representation
a wrong word.
balance. Okay, so it's not, the intent was never to change the 33% voting representation.
Correct. Right now, Pendleton has 66%, about 6% of 2/3 of the vote. We've got 33 1/3.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought we were trying to, because the way the sentence reads, where it says this has been an ongoing issue, I think we were addressing that issue when I read this. But
And it does address the voting. You know, it's been 2 to 1 for 42 years. And this
It'll still
allows
be, it'll continue to be
2 to 1.
3 votes.
3 votes. It'd be Anderson County, Pendleton, and Clemson. So each one will have an equal vote.
which is what the situation is now.
Pendleton has 2 votes and we have 1 vote.
Oh, okay.
So that was the original agreement, because they initially owned,
As a third party.
and now we're adding Anderson County.
So they're now part of this.
Correct.
And they own, actually own 200,000 gallons per day right now, and they'll own more. So it gives them, they're going to be a big partner. They've got the money lined up to go, so.
Got it.
Does that help? Good. Any other questions, comments? Would somebody like to make a motion?
So since I confused the issue, I'll make the motion to consider memorandum of understanding between the City of Clemson, Town of Pendleton, Anderson County for the management and operation of Pendleton, Clemson wastewater treatment.
Second.
All right. Any other further discussion, comments? All right. All in favor, raise your right hand. All right. Passes unanimously. All right. Next item. Thank you again, Benji. Consider a resolution. Well, you want to talk about this one first? All right. I'm going to bring it up, and then I'll let Andy give us guidance on this. Consider a resolution supporting Pickens County property tax increase to replace the vehicle maintenance fee.
Alicia and I met with the PCMA a few weeks ago, and the topic of the meeting was the county's plan to raise millage, property tax operations millage, to offset the lost revenue from the vehicle maintenance fee that was determined to be illegal. The county has stopped collecting that fee because maybe they probably have to pay it back if they continue to collect it. The county was basically saying, how can we all work together on this? The idea isn't to, we're already in a big hole maintenance-wise with our paving. We really need to make sure we replace the revenues. The plan they discussed there was, I believe it was a $3.8 million increase, which would have been a break-even. That would have replaced the current revenues. And there was also discussion that wasn't really enough. They could go up, they could max out their millage and get on a 20-year paving cycle. And that's what they've actually ended up doing. They've actually gone and raised the millage to the point where they can get on a 20-year cycle. The other thing they asked us to do at the PCMA meeting was that they asked each municipality to pass a resolution supporting the property tax millage with the understanding that the existing intergovernmental agreement allocating the cities our portion of that fee would continue for this year, and then we would go back and renegotiate them based on each municipality's individual needs and what makes sense for everybody. Well, when they raised the millage higher than the 3.8 mils, that brought up a whole lot of questions among members of council about the intergovernmental agreement and if it was still proportionate, if it threw things out of whack. And I believe it was Councilman Bowers said, in order to keep this thing moving, moved that we remove section 5 from that ordinance, which was the IGA. So what they've basically done is right now, their third reading, increase the millage, but does not have an intergovernmental agreement in it. So I'm recommending to y'all that you take no action on this. Now, next Wednesday, I spoke with Administrator Roper today, and he said what he's supposed to do is get with all the municipalities and start working on new intergovernmental agreement to take back to county council. We're going to meet next Wednesday at the county offices to begin that conversation. So, based on what Alicia and I saw at the PCMA meeting, it seems that there's at least a majority of the council members who would prefer to have an IGA with the cities. I do not think it's unanimous at this time, but I think it's definitely worth having a conversation to see if we can get there. So that's where we're at now. So basically what I've learned is I would just recommend not taking any action today. And we'll come back to you later with a proposed IGA with the county.
And I would support that because at being at that meeting, we constantly communicated as a municipality. All of us said that if the IGA agreement was not, then that would leave us in a situation where we could not guarantee that that funding would come back in terms of road maintenance, since that fee was considered unconstitutional. So they were saying that the only way that this could probably pass as if we were all on board and we would support it. But the compromise was that the IGA, the intergovernmental agreement would still be part of that discussion. And so we sat there, I don't know how long, before that was what we all agreed upon. So when I saw that, and I do agree with Andy, I don't think it was unanimous, but the members who were there indicated that there were some council members who were not in favor of IGA in the first place.
I'm going to proceed and try to work with everybody to come up with something that makes sense for everyone. Try to come up with a good partner solution. I will have to advise you that there is a possibility, depending on how things go, that residents of Pickens County who live in a municipality may not be getting the benefit of the roads fees that they're paying.
Yep.
That is a potential outcome.
What has happened in the past? Have there been IGAs for other projects?
Well, in the past, it's gone back and forth. I believe at one time that the counties were allocating the money. When they first passed the vehicle maintenance fee, it was coming to the cities, as well as the county. And the idea was the cities are best able to determine which roads need to be done from their jurisdictions and communicate with their citizens when the roads are going to be blocked, things like that. And then there's a change in council, and they said, no, we're going to keep it all, and we're going to schedule the roads. And then what happens is, they've had some really good staff people, but when you get two governments working together, sometimes an asphalt truck will show up back here on Stony Creek, and you're blocking off someone's driveway, and no one knew they were coming. That's the main issue when it comes down to it. And I don't think it's like they're not going to pave any roads in the city of Clemson if they don't give it to the city. It just doesn't allow us to, coordinate our utility projects and do all the things we're trying to do without digging up a newly paved road and being able to allow our citizens to know what to expect when they wake up and go to work in the morning. So then they brought the money back to us and allowed us to do that, and now they've taken it away again. At least for right now, in an undetermined sort of state. So that's where we're at again.
I just didn't think this could be the first time this had happened.
It's a third.
It's good to know we're getting better at it.
How much additional revenue will what was the ultimate tax increase, millage increase?
5?
So 5 mills. Do you know what proportion of that is going to come from Clemson?
I don't know.
And how much more that is than we would typically get from the vehicle maintenance fee if we were able to work this out in some.
We can come up with it. The problem is we'd be receiving a whole lot more money than there are county roads in the area.
Right.
So
yeah, I'm not expecting we're going to get every dime back, but is it enough additional revenue over what the vehicle maintenance fee was that we ought to be, if it works out?
In theory, it should.
In theory, we should be, if the IGA works out, this should be helpful.
Very helpful.
Very helpful. Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions for Andy? Thank you, Andy. Thanks for the synopsis. Appreciate it. All right, so I think everybody's heard loud and clear from Andy what to do next. So, all right, the next item, unless somebody wants to make a motion. Next item D is consider any amendments necessary for the current mask ordinance. Andy, this is your last item.
Well, I'm going to leave it up to council to let us know if they think anything needs to be done. I can tell you that we have received an uptick in calls from people in grocery stores primarily wanting to know if we're enforcing the ordinance. And I can tell you we have issued a ticket for every complaint we've received. We've gone and issued a ticket except for one. So we've got one more complaint when we have issued citations. I can't tell you we issued the actual offender a citation, or we went to the site and addressed the problem on the site. We've had no problems with the businesses putting up the signs, at least that I'm aware of.
I've seen them.
And when the children's masks came in, we went and delivered them to all the daycare facilities. And And unless the police have anything to add to it,
Chief's not.
that's your update.
The only other update that I don't think we've sent out yet, but we just got it from a Pickens County School District. They're showing less than 1% right now. Just FYI.
Yeah, their latest graphs kind of mimic what Dr. Swan predicted, and that is that ramp up and then fall off a cliff after it burns through them pretty quickly, and that's kind of what the chart actually indicated.
That's not, and let me clarify my comments. That's not quarantine. That's actually COVID positive, less than 1% from when we start talking about Pickens County schools, it's over 16,000 students, so keep that in mind. So, but it was less than 1%.
And also, the university I checked a while ago was 1.2% based on last week's testing through the 18th. So that number really hadn't moved much.
All right. If there are no other discussions, comments, all right, we'll move on. I know we're going to be talking about this every city council meeting, so thank you, Andy, for bringing that up. Mary or Beverly, can I can we hunt here real quickly? I see mayor, council reports, comments, new business after executive session.
That wasn't on purpose, that was just
Okay. So do we have to make any type of, are we good just to go into mayor, council reports, comments, new business?
I think
Okay.
that'd be like
Thank you.
a Scribner's error.
All right, look, see, I do, even if we're not past 8:30 or 9, so I'm,
getting on one page.
okay, that's right. I like it when it's on one
then
page.
you
That's a
have to add
personal
it in.
opinion. It's a personal opinion. All right, so mayor, council reports, comments, new business. Yes, sir? Yeah.
So just quickly, three things. So as you already said, Thursday night's the next conversations with council at Nettles Park. I think the thinking behind it was if people were there with kids or something else, like practices or other activities, they can stop in. You don't have to be there for the whole time. John, Robert, and Catherine will be there that night. And if we can get that, maybe one more notification, change in place so people don't show up at the fire station. Second thing is I do think we need, and it wasn't on tonight's agenda, but to get this process going, looking at the sunset clause on the strategic planning ordinance number 1. If you think about it, the next meeting of the planning commission is their October meeting. And after that meeting, there are only, I believe, 3 or 4 meetings before the December 20th deadline. Now, I'm not sure, Andy, if we have to have PC before public hearings. John, I'll look at you. Can public hearings be before planning commission? Does it have to be in a sequence or not?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Does a public hearing have to go after the planning commission considers something, or can the planning commission go after the public hearing?
You mean, can they have it on the same night, or are you talking about with respect to the 2 readings by council?
With the whole process? Can the process start with public hearing, or does it have to start with planning commission?
I think you can do it either way, but typically we do start with the planning commission holding the public hearing.
So again, I guess that's my point. If we start with the planning commission doesn't meet, I believe, until the second Monday of every month. That means if we wait for them to meet in October, the first public hearing would be at our second meeting in October, which would then leave 3 more meetings if you consider the meeting, the December meeting, that we would have to make our 2 readings. So I guess my point is we're getting very close to backing up to a point where we're not going to be able to get this done if we don't start. The problem is, and I've said this before, if we don't do anything before December 20th, and we don't have a suitable plan to this commission, that means people who are banging at the gate to make proposals to develop the city of Clemson, there will be no obstacle to doing that. And in effect, you've done nothing. So I want to make sure, Andy or Mary, whatever, Robert, that this schedule has enough time built in that if there is 1 or 2 wrinkles, like heaven forbid, December 20th is the great snowstorm of 2021, that we can still have time to do something. Because literally, if we don't do this, and we don't get the report done, and if we do, it's great, but if we don't, the people knocking at the gates of the city will be in the city with no defenses whatsoever. I've been watching Viking movies. We'll be in the city with no defenses. So I don't know what the schedule is thinking back, but we're already to the point that unless there's a special meeting of the Planning Commission, they won't start this discussion until their October meeting. And I watched their last meeting. Their schedule is getting so busy. I think Lane was at that meeting. I think it was 2 or 3 hours for that meeting. So my fear would be if we back them up to the October meeting and they can't get to it, their next meeting until their November meeting, unless there's a special meeting, that's already too late. So I'm suggesting that if we can have a public hearing first, that we do that. If we can't, we maybe request the PC to have a special meeting, but backtracking from December 20th makes me very nervous. And I also would hate if December 20th, something does come to council that we don't agree with, but it comes down to it's this or nothing. Then we're in that awful position once again of having to approve something we don't like that may not address the issues because we have no choice, because then it comes down to that or nothing, which is a terrible position to put us into, a terrible position to put the city into. My concern is if we don't date this and progress correctly, come December 21st, we've done nothing, and the city is open to development, and the gates are no longer guarded. So, I don't know how, Andy or Mary, the process, I don't know how we want to proceed, but I don't think we can keep delaying. Think about it, a strategic meeting next, the group who's doing the downtown meetings won't even be, I'm guessing, in the city until sometime in October or later for the first
We
meeting.
should have a project scheduled for the redevelopment workshop by the end of this week.
Okay.
And your next meeting, you would have that timeline for your discussion if you want to put that on the next agenda.
I don't know the system. It's not just us. I guess what I'm thinking about, it has the, it has 2 readings, planning commission, anything that backs us up once puts us right at the door. So I'm worried about that.
So we don't have to have the thing done by December 20th, like through 2 readings, planning commission, public hearing, two readings. We have to have something in shape that on December 20th that we can have a first reading that night to have it into pending ordinance.
Actually, we don't actually have to have a reading.
Right.
We have to have at least a rough draft of an ordinance, and then we set a public hearing, and those 2 actions by council.
Put it into pending.
Yes.
Yeah, so we don't have to have the final things. Part B is that Elaine and a number of other people this week met with Shannon, and staff is currently working on a proposal that will have to go to planning commission and public hearings and get some more input for some basic residential by right that would apply to all commercial districts throughout the city. If we have that going along, and I'm confident that we can have that well into pending ordinance and in good shape before December 20th, and that will replace the current ordinance that we have the sunset clause on.
That may all be, I don't know, but I feel way more comfortable having that sunset not in there, getting ready for any awful things that could possibly. I don't know we lose. I guess what it is, I don't know we lose anything by deleting that date. It sounds like we're moving along quickly. My understanding of the sunset clause that was going to sort of be the stick to get us moving forward. It sounds like we're doing that. I just feel a whole lot safer, if it's not necessary anymore, that we don't have that in there. I don't know. I guess I'm saying, Bob, I don't know what we lose by deleting the sunset.
I think it's premature.
Yeah.
I honestly think you need to get the schedule from some design strategies. Let's see that schedule. And then at the end of the day, like we said before, this was just going to be a concept that we hope to have by December 20th. As long as we understand that and we have time to go into a pending ordinance, then that gets us where we want to be. We start talking sunset and moving that around, that's got other implications. I don't think we want to go down that path right now.
I don't either, John, but I'd rather risk that. This is our sort of what's the worst error to make. I'd rather risk that problem than risk coming up to December 20th with nothing comfortable with. But we disagree, so that's why we have discussion.
We've got 2.5 months plus to come up with a pending ordinance with some by right. It may not be the end of the road, depending on what comes out of our citywide meetings, but we will be taking steps towards it. And when you put that pending ordinance in, that's when the sunset goes away. And that one, unless you want to put another one at that time for a little further along.
Well, again, I disagree with that, but so I think we need to have this on the agenda for discussion with dates, John. I agree with you. We need to know when is the crisis going to occur. Maybe there isn't one. And I also would like to know, though, because my interpretation of what we passed is not what you just said. Because I'd like to see the actual thing we passed and what it said. I didn't think it gave us much wiggle room at all, but I may misinterpret that. But I would like to see that. So maybe this is just a discussion with all the information, a clear statement of what the ordinance really says and what it really means, a feasible timeline with maybe a little cushion built in, and see where we are. Get the facts before we make the decision. But I want to see it before I'm comfortable saying that, I'm willing to risk all of this for an artificial deadline. I'm going to go back to my example of Afghanistan, where a deadline got in the way of good, sound decision making. I hate that to happen to us. I may be wrong.
Well noted. Well noted. You have 3 items. That's 2.
Actually, the second one was the sidewalks. We already did that.
Okay. Other reports, comments?
Just want to make the announcement, we're having our Clemson United for Racial Equity Forum next Thursday, September 30th at 6:30, and it'll be at Little John Community. So all welcome.
Any other reports, comments? All right, we'll move now. Not yet, but I'm going to talk about executive session first. We're looking to appoint the vacant seat on the Planning Commission, South Carolina Code of Laws, Section 304070. And then we're also discussion of employment, compensation, promotion, demotion, discipline, or release of an employee. And then we also have a second item, discuss the city attorney professional services agreement, South Carolina Code of Law, Section 3470A2. Should have said A1 in the first one. Discussion of negotiations, incident, and proposed contractual arrangements. Do I have a motion to go to executive session?
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All right. Can I get a, sorry, can I get a motion to go back into regular session?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All right.
So I'd like to make a motion that we ask John Crawley to finish the term of Nathan Clark on the planning commission.
Second.
All right. Further comments, discussion? I would just like to make one. We greatly appreciate Nathan Clark serving for half his term, which equates to 2 years. So thank you very much for your service to community, Nathan Clark. So any other further comments, discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All right, everybody. Sounds good. Okay. And the second item that we had was to discuss the city attorney professional services agreement, South Carolina Code of Laws. And at this time, we had that discussion, but we'll be finalizing that in the near future. So, Andy, unless I need to be adding anything else to that discussion.
No, I just have to give one little revision in here that I'll talk to Mary about. A version for you to vote on in your next meeting.
Perfect. So, all right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.